I hate turning that off. That's MBD, Mordechai Ben David, singing his song Shir Lamelech, Sing to the King. Let me turn that off. How are you, my holy sisters and brothers? Let's light up the darkness. All right. Got some beautiful material to cover today. Who is with us as we get it going on a Tuesday evening? John in Sedona, Melissa in Great Neck, Sharon in New Jersey, Randy in Florida, Stephen in New Hampshire, James in Indianapolis, Renee in Indianapolis, in Bloomington in Indiana, Tom in PA, Lucy in Minnesota, Allison in North Carolina, Patrice in Utah, PK in Colorado, Paul in the Great Northwest, and it's hot, hot, hot. Gwen in Michigan, Anne Marie in Utah. Beautiful evening, breathtaking day. May you enjoy it. Nancy in North Carolina, Anne in Merced, Ryan in Jacksonville, Paula, thoughtful, there's that smile, Bill in Berkeley, Gwen loves the music, Tanner in North Carolina. Over there, Marjorie on the YouTube side in Virginia. Welcome, everybody. Today's episode of AT Daily is sponsored by Michael and Jean Schechter. And they made a beautiful dedication. They said, Sal, thank you for your inspiring talk on the Shlach, the spies, in this week's Torah portion that I said a couple days ago, and how it is pertinent to today's anti-Semitic actions. May you and your family stay safe. Amen. Thank you so much, Michael and Jean. May you and your family be showered in blessings. We thank you for your sponsorship and partnering with us in sharing Torah with the world. And we say, regarding your family being showered in blessings, Amen. Okay. Let me get that set up over here. All right. A short bit of Torah before we get to our page of Talmud, entirely related to our page of Talmud. I thought about this in this morning's davening, this morning's prayers. So we have, in the morning, after we recite the standing prayer, the Amida, also known as the Shmona Esrei, the 18 blessings, the centerpiece of every service. On every morning, after we do that, first we say it privately, then the Hazan, the cantor, repeats it out loud, and it's in the nature of a public prayer. And then we do the Tachanun. Not every day. There are certain days when Tachanun is omitted, but on most weekdays, we do the Tachanun, and that is, it means the plea. And it's a plea for mercy. And it includes the confession that we normally, most of us associate with Yom Kippur, but we say it every day. And so I thought I would just read that to you in English. So, our God and God of our fathers, let our prayer come before you, and do not hide yourself from our plea. For we are not so arrogant or obstinate as to say before you, Lord our God and God of our fathers, that we are righteous and have not sinned. For in truth, we and our fathers have sinned. Right? So this is very much talking about that communal sense of confession. Right? So even if we didn't do anything particular lately, we're part of a community, and the community has many sins on its back. And then we say, we do this silently, of course. This is done silently. At Yom Kippur, it's done aloud, but on every day, it's done silently. And we would read to ourselves, we have been guilty, we have acted treacherously, we have robbed, we have spoken. I'll continue in English, but just so you get the sound of that in Hebrew, Ashamnu, Bagadnu, Gazalnu, Debarnu Doifi, He'evinu, Vehirshianu, Zadnu, Hamasnu, Tifalnu Sheker. Right? And so if we continue this, we have been guilty, we have acted treacherously, we have robbed, we have spoken slander, we have acted perversely, we have acted wickedly, we have acted presumptuously, we have been violent, we have framed lies, we have given bad advice, we have deceived, we have scorned, we have rebelled, we have provoked, we have turned away. In Hebrew, by the way, this is in alphabetical order. We have committed iniquity, we have transgressed, we have persecuted, we have been obstinate, we have acted wickedly, we have corrupted, we have acted abominably, we have strayed, and we have led others astray. We have turned away from your commandments and good laws to no avail. For you are just in all that has befallen us, for you have acted faithfully while we have done wickedly. Now, we read that every day. I mean, unless it's a day of celebration, right? So we don't do that in the days of Sivan, the first 2 weeks of the month that contains Shavuos. We don't do it during the whole month of Nisan that contains Passover. So there's a sort of extended periods of celebration when we don't recite the Tachanun. But on normal days, and we don't say it on Shabbos, but on normal weekdays, we want to get into, this frame of mind just for a portion. There are joyful parts of the daily prayers as well. But it's good on a daily basis to humble yourself, right? And to say, no matter where I stand now, I know that I've sinned in my life, and I'm part of a community that has sinned. And maybe I haven't done enough to keep my community from sin. And it's good. It's good to humble yourself before the Lord on a daily basis. And this is the recitation of sins that we do on Yom Kippur, and here it's done on a daily basis. One thing that's maybe worth pointing out, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10th. The 10th of these, or I guess it's really the 9th of these, right? Because it's Ches. So the 9th of these is Hamasnu. Hamasnu. Well, actually, it should be the 8th, right? That should be because the 8th letter. Hamasnu. We have been violent. It's kind of one of those odd quirks of language that the word in Hebrew, Hamas, means violence, cruelty, right? And that's the name of the terrorist organization that is at war with us, the organization that runs, wields political power in Gaza. It's run by an organization. For them, in Arabic, it's an acronym that means, it's the resistance force against Israel, something like that. And in Arabic, I think it means zeal. But Arabic and Hebrew are sister languages. They're related in a lot of ways. And in Hebrew, that word means violence. In Spanish, it happens to mean never, Hamas. Interesting quirk of language. I'll just leave it at that. Okay, so I thought I would share that with you today. And it has, and so all those words, right, are in the first person plural. We have done these things. We have been rebellious. We have sinned. We have given bad advice. We have robbed. We have been violent, right? So we take, it's about being accountable for yourself and your own sins, and for the community of which you are a part. And it's a feature of the daily prayers. If you're not doing the vidui as part of Tachanun on a daily basis, check it out. It's in every Jewish prayer book. Okay, let's get to our daf. We are on page 51, daf Nun Aleph. here in Tractate Yoma. These are the laws of Yom Kippur. We are in chapter 5. Today we'll be completing our discussion of the first Mishna of chapter 5 and opening our discussion of the second Mishna. We've been steadily working our way through the observance of Yom Kippur as it was done when the temple was standing. And as we'll see today, we're going to sort of distinguish a little bit how it was done when it was the tabernacle in the wilderness, and then for the first 400 years that the children of Israel were in the promised land, and then how it was done in the first temple, and then how it was done in the second temple. We'll have some distinctions there today. Yesterday, we were talking about the debate about whether certain offerings that are brought in the temple, excuse me, and specifically the bull of the high priest, but it was compared to other offerings, and are they communal offerings or individual offerings? And as such, it's going to have different laws associated with these offerings about whether they can be replaced or they can still be used if the owner dies. So the question that was asked, if a high priest on Yom Kippur, part of what he has to do on that day is bring the bull of the high priest, which atones for his own unwitting sins. It's a sin offering. It atones for his unwitting sins, for his families, and for his brethren, the other priests who serve in the temple. Is that an individual offering? Is it a communal offering? Or is it something in between, an offering that's owned by multiple partners? And we seemed to say yesterday that it's an offering brought by multiple partners, and therefore, if the priest dies, the high priest dies during Yom Kippur, he doesn't have to, the replacement high priest who's going to step in, if the high priest already slaughtered that bull, the replacement high priest isn't going to have to slaughter yet another bull because he had, seemingly a partial ownership in that bull. That's where we left off yesterday. Now we continue this discussion. Now, the Gemara seeks to prove that the other priests were not full partners in this offering, the bull of the high priest on Yom Kippur, but only gained atonement as his fellow priests incidentally to the high priest bringing his own offering, or at least for himself and his family. And let me derive this halacha, this law, from the fact that the Merciful One states, "And Aaron shall sacrifice the bull of the sin offering, which is for himself." That's the beginning of Leviticus 16:11, indicating that the high priest brings the bull from his own property. Right? You would think that since the Torah prescribes that he must bring this bull on Yom Kippur and is part of the very carefully arranged, ritual choreography of the Yom Kippur day, that communal funds would be used to purchase that bull. But no, it has to come from his own property. The high priest himself has to purchase that bull and bring it as an offering on Yom Kippur. As it was taught in a Baraisa, which is for himself, means that he brings it from his own property and not from the property of the community. I might have thought that the high priest may not bring this offering from the property of the community because the community as a whole does not gain atonement through it. Only he, his family, and the fellow priests. But he may bring it from the property of his fellow priests, as his fellow priests do gain atonement through it. Therefore, the verse states, which is for himself, i.e., it must belong to him and no one else. Now, the Gemara continues. Sorry, I'm just having a little canker sore inside my lip, so I just had to keep pausing. I might have thought that the high priest should not bring the bull from the property of the other priests ab initio, but if he did bring it from their property, the offering is still valid. Therefore, the verse continues and states again, "And he shall slaughter the bull for the sin offering, which is for himself." That's the second part of Leviticus 16:11. So in the same verse, the text repeats the phrase, "which is for himself." And it's to emphasize that this requirement is indispensable, and if the high priest brings a bull that belongs to someone else, even to the other priests, the offering is invalid. Now, the Gemara rejects this proof, and according to your reasoning, If his fellow priests do not acquire a share in the bull, how does it atone for them? Since they achieve atonement through the offering, they must have a share in it. Rather, you must say that the property of Aaron the high priest is different in that the merciful one rendered it ownerless with regard to his fellow priests. Although the high priest brings a bull from his own funds, it is as though he sanctifies it on behalf of all the priests. But if so, here too, with regard to substitution, we could likewise say that the property of Aaron is different in that the merciful one rendered it ownerless with regard to his fellow priests. So the conclusion of this, although the high priest buys his bull with his own money, the Torah rendered his property ownerless and considered all of the priests joint owners of this offering. So again, it's a little bit of a different rationale, but if the high priest died on Yom Kippur having already slaughtered the bull, they wouldn't need to bring another one because it's not an individual's sin offering. It was a sin offering purchased by an individual, the high priest, but then it's rendered as if it's ownerless, and the priests, sort of all of the priests as their mini community, kind of come in and take possession of it. They are all receiving atonement through the high priest's bull. So even though he must pay for it personally out of his own private property, they all have a share in it. That concludes our discussion of Mishnah number 1. Now we move on to Mishnah number 2. The high priest would then walk west. So we're getting back to the choreography of the day, how Yom Kippur was run. The high priest would then walk west through the sanctuary until he reaches the area between the two curtains that separated the sanctuary and the Holy of Holies. And the space between them, between the curtains, was 1 cubit. Rabbi Yosei says there was only one curtain there, as it is stated, and the curtain shall divide for you between the sanctuary and the Holy of Holies. That's the Mishnah. Now, before we go further, I made this little chart to help us understand this. Okay, so let's go like that. All right, we don't have too much glare. Okay, so what do we have here? Oh, let me do it like that. What we have here is the entrance hall right here. This is the entrance hall right here. The priest would come up the steps through the entrance hall, and this is the sanctuary. This is the inner altar, which is the incense altar, where the incense would be burned in the sanctuary. This is the menorah, the candelabrum, and this is the table of the showbreads. And then this is the curtain, or curtains, that separate between the sanctuary and the Holy of Holies. And inside here, the Holy of Holies, we have the Ark of the Covenant with its wooden staves. And actually, to be more accurate, the staves went like this. They were long, and they actually made the curtain protrude into the sanctuary a little bit. So they don't go through the curtain, but they make it, kind of go like that a little bit, right? Protrude. Okay. So, but there's 2 curtains here. This protrusion is actually going to be a little bit of an issue. We'll come back to that. Now, when there was the tabernacle in the wilderness, this was definitely just one layer, right? There was just one curtain there. And so what you had then was... Right, so in the wilderness, they had just the one curtain like that, and the opening was on the north side. So when it was a tabernacle on Yom Kippur, the priest would come walking through there and through there, or possibly come walking through here. That's what we're going to be talking about. When it was the first temple, the Temple of Solomon, this was a solid wall that had an opening in it that had a single curtain. So it was like there was a wall like that, and then there was the curtain in the middle. But in the second temple, no Ark of the Covenant. It was missing. That's why there's no problem. Okay, so then this is... There's no staves of the Ark of the Covenant protruding through the curtain in the second temple because the Ark of the Covenant had been hidden away. So in the second temple, we have a curtain like that and another curtain like this. Okay? And then we're going to talk about the route that the high priest took. But it was these overlapping curtains. And so there was a passageway between the curtains. And this space is, like 1 cubit wide. Okay, so that's what we're talking about. Hopefully that helps illustrate. So now we can understand a little bit better when we're reading. So the Gemara asks, Rabbi Yosef is speaking well to the rabbis, i.e. Rabbi Yosef provides solid support for his opinion. And the rabbis could say to you, this applies only in the tabernacle, right? So the rabbis could say to you, that only in the tabernacle were there 2 curtains that separated the sanctuary from the Holy of Holies. However, in the second temple, since there was no 1 cubit partition separating the Holy of Holies from the sanctuary of the temple, as it was only in the first temple that there was a 1 cubit partition, and the rabbis were uncertain with regard to the sanctity of this 1 cubit space, the dividing area between the sanctuary and the Holy of Holies, it was like a border that was 1 cubit wide, and they weren't sure if that 1 cubit width was part of the sanctuary or part of the Holy of Holies. They weren't sure. And the rabbis were uncertain with regard to the sanctity of the space occupied by the 1 cubit partition, whether it had the sanctity of the inside of the Holy of Holies or the sanctity of the outside area, the sanctuary. Therefore, the sages of the time prepared 2 curtains to enclose this space of uncertain status. And maybe that's why they came up with the 2 curtain system. Now, the sages taught when the high priest walked to the Holy of Holies, he walked on the southern side between the inner altar and the candelabrum, right? So he walked through, he came in here, right, from the east, and then he walked between the altar and the candelabrum. So he walked through here, and he came to the north, if there was the opening in the north, so he could make that direct walk. Or if it was this 2 curtain system, he came from the south so that he could go directly to here, to this opening, right? To this opening here. He goes down through there, and then he walks up this passageway between the curtains, and then he'll actually enter the Holy of Holies on the north side. He'll enter on the north end of the Holy of Holies. Right. So when the high priest walked to the Holy of Holies, he walked on the south side between the inner altar and the candelabrum. This is the statement of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Meir says that he walked on the north side between the table and the altar, and some say he walked along the wall. So on the north side between the altar and the table of the showbread. So he came right through here and then down to there and up through there. Or if the opening was up here, like it was in the tabernacle, he could just go directly in at the north side. And some say he walked along the wall, between the wall and the table of the showbreads. Now, whose opinion is introduced by the title, Some Say? Rav Chisda said, this is the opinion of Rabbi Yosef in our Mishna, according to whom there is only 1 curtain, and who said that the entrance was positioned in the north. Now, according to all opinions, the entrance to the Holy of Holies, when you actually enter the Holy of Holies, that's on the north. And since Rabbi Yossi believed that there was just 1 curtain, the high priest would walk in a straight line toward the entrance along the north side of the sanctuary. Rabbi Yehuda maintains that there were 2 curtains. Today's a short class, so I'm actually almost done. If you got your questions and comments, get them in now. Rabbi Yehuda maintains that there were 2 curtains, and therefore he could have said to you that although the entrance to the Holy of Holies was on the north side, because there were 2 curtains, one behind the other, the entrance was positioned in the south. The high priest entered on the south side of the sanctuary into that space between the two curtains, and then he walked north, from south to north, between the curtains, until he reached the opening into the Holy of Holies on the north end of the Holy of Holies. This is Rabbi Yehuda. This is how because Rabbi Yehuda said there were two curtains, so how are you going to enter? You enter the gap between the curtains on the south side, you walk up the passageway between the two curtains, and then you enter the Holy of Holies on the north. And the Gemara asks, and Rabbi Meir, in accordance with whose opinion does he hold? If he holds in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, with regard to the place of the entrance, the high priest should enter as explained by Rabbi Yehuda. Conversely, if he holds in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yosei, he should enter as explained by Rabbi Yosei. And the Gemara answers, actually, Rabbi Meir holds in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yosei. But he could have said to you, the tables, the one holding the showbread and the other tables next to it, right? So in Solomon's temple, the first temple, the sanctuary had a bunch of extra items in it. There was not only the menorah, the gold, the menorah made of hammered gold, right? That Moses and the children of Israel fashioned in the wilderness. Then he made 10 copies of it, and likewise the table of the showbreads, Solomon had 10 more tables built that were just like it. They weren't used. They were essentially ceremonial, an additional 10 tables and an additional 10 menorahs. Why? Because the sanctuary was much larger. The sanctuary in the first temple was much larger than the sanctuary in the tabernacle. And just to sort of fill the space in the proper manner, there shouldn't be anything in there other than the incense altar, the menorah, and the showbread table. So he made copies of them to sort of magnify their importance by having almost like a retinue of assistant menorahs and assistant showbread tables, as it were. So because there was all this stuff in the sanctuary, Rabbi Meir is saying, okay, you couldn't take a direct route to the opening in the north when there was one curtain, or to the opening in the middle of that partition, which in Solomon's temple, it wasn't just a curtain at the end. There was a wall there, and then there was a curtain that was placed in the opening that was within the middle of the wall. That's just in the first temple, right? So one curtain in the tabernacle, a wall with an opening and a curtain in it in the first temple, and two curtains only filling that space in the second temple. Right, and so Rabbi Meir holds in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yossi, and he could have said to you, the tables, the one holding the showbread and the other tables next to it, were arranged north to south, and the table blocked him on the north side, and therefore the high priest could not enter in a direct line as the space was too narrow. Or, if you wish, say instead, actually the tables were arranged east to west, there was a straight path, but due to the honor of the divine presence, it was not proper conduct to enter directly, as it is more appropriate for the high priest to approach the Holy of Holies somewhat circuitously. And in response to this, Rabbi Yosei could have said to you, the Jewish people are beloved by God, as the Torah did not require them to make use of an agent, in other words, an angel, to intercede on their behalf. Instead, God hears the nation's prayers directly. Consequently, the high priest who represents the people on Yom Kippur, the high priest is an agent of the people, he's representing them, but he's not going to take his, the plea to have for an atonement of the nation. He's not going to take that to some, angel emissary, angel agent of God. He's going to take the pleas for atonement and forgiveness of the nation directly to God. And since he's going to speak directly to God, and he's going to have an encounter with the divine presence in the Holy of Holies, it's not necessary to take this circuitous walk as he walks through the sanctuary. So we don't really have a final word on the path, at least not yet in our discussion. That's where the page 51 ends. But the question that we are left with, right, is what was the path, at least, in the tabernacle, in the first temple, in the second temple. So in the second temple, we don't have all the extra tables and we don't have all the extra menorahs. We have 2 curtains. We don't have the Ark of the Covenant inside the Holy of Holies. So we don't have its staves kind of poking through the curtain the way it did in the tabernacle. So there is this open passage between the 2 curtains. You enter it on the south, you leave it on the north as the high priest enters the Holy of Holies. And so the question we have is, does he take a direct route to that southern entrance to the space between the curtains? Or does he take a little bit of a serpentine route out of deference to God? And what we see is, he doesn't have to take that. It seems he doesn't have to take that serpentine route because the Jewish people know that they're beloved of God. And so even though we hang our heads in shame, or at least with humility every day in that Tachanun that I read to you at the beginning of the class, we repeat that every day. We say that to ourselves silently, and we try to, what's the word I'm looking for? It's a word that starts with a C. Cultivate. We try to cultivate a humble heart and a spirit of humility each day in our morning prayers. But that list of our, communal sins that we're atoning for, on Yom Kippur, we sing them. Why would we sing the fact that we have sinned? Because we have this direct access to our Father in heaven, who has told us that we can make an atonement on Yom Kippur and that we will be forgiven. And so there's a closeness to God. We're afflicting ourselves on Yom Kippur. We have a long fast. We don't eat for 25 hours. We can't wear comfortable clothing in the way that we would other days, or at least honorable clothing like leather shoes. We afflict ourselves, but we feel this closeness to God, and we'll even sing our sins on Yom Kippur. And I think that's reflected in this idea. Why does the priest take a straight route to the Holy of Holies? Because as who was it? The Rabbi Yossi could have said to you, the Jewish people are beloved by God, as the Torah did not require them to make use of an agent, i.e., for example, an angel, to intercede on their behalf. Rather, God hears the nation's prayers directly. All right, let's go to your comments and questions. Sharon. In every weekday Amida, we say Slach Lanu, Machalanu, in all Amidot, even when we do not do Tachanun, when it is also customary to beat our chest in the confessional. Very good. So within the standing prayer, I think it's the 6th of the blessings that we say, right? Right. So first we do 3 blessings that refer to our ancestors. Then we bless God because God is holy and his name is holy. Then we bless God for giving humanity the knowledge and understanding, to be able to perceive who we are and who God is. Then we bless God and ask God to bring us back and to accept our repentance. And we bless God for being a God who desires repentance, who desires atonement. And then what Sharon is referring to is the blessing of forgiveness. And we say, Slach lanu avinu ki chatanu machalanu malkeinu ki pashanu ki el tova salachata baruch ato adoshem hanun hamarbe lisloach. Forgive us, our Father, for we have sinned. Pardon us, our King, for we have transgressed. And we actually strike our chest twice on those. Once for each of those. We have sinned and we have transgressed. For you are a good and forgiving God. Blessed are you, Lord, the gracious one, who repeatedly forgives. Right? So even on days that we don't recite Tachanun, we do include that in the Amida. We don't say that on Shabbos because we leave out those middle blessings. But every other, if it's not a holiday or Shabbos, we do say that even on days when we don't recite Tachanun. Lucy, We can't detach ourselves from the sins of our community or nation or another group. We are always part of it because we also benefit from the good things like support and even our life and nurture. Exactly. Feeling a part of a community means you do have to hold yourself accountable as part of the community, both for the blessings that the community receives and for the sins that the community has committed and which require atonement. Tom says, and I guess Tom is addressing Lucy, also all Jews will be blamed by anti-Semites for anything they think that one Jew did wrong. Very good. So that's this idea that we have to make a Kiddush Hashem, right? When we're publicly being Jewish, we have to conduct ourselves in a righteous, upright manner, lest we come to be the one who transgresses and does something, a public sin or a public crime, and then all Jews are going to be smeared with that brush, right? I remember in the 80s when I was growing up, and there were all these insider trading scandals coming from Wall Street. And unfortunately, a lot of the criminals had Jewish names. I was like, oh, which Jew today? And much more recently, we've seen other people like Madoff, terrible how he hurt the community and the nation. And so many people who came to rely on him for their retirement accounts and, major charities that invested with him and turned out to be a Ponzi scheme. And what a shanda that was for the Jewish people. Okay, Nina had to leave about 10 minutes ago to take our son somewhere. So let me just check if there are any further comments that I should check on. Lucy says it must not have been easy to navigate that narrow corridor between curtains with a scoop of burning coals in his right hand and the ladle full of incense in his left hand. Very good. And I think, I wanted to mention this, so thank you for that, Lucy, and we'll finish with this. Right, so it's not just like now you get the real picture, right? So the high priest has been preparing for this, right? We started in our beginning of Tractate Yoma. He was sequestered in the temple compound for a week, for 7 days before Yom Kippur. They've been going over and over the laws with him. He's been thinking about this a lot longer than that. If he's a new high priest, he's been thinking about this since he was appointed. If he's done this many times before, as Yom Kippur starts to approach, probably for the whole month of Elul, the month before the month that contains Yom Kippur, he's really thinking about, is he ready, getting himself spiritually, mentally, physically ready for the challenges of that day. He's going to represent the whole nation. He has so much work, avoda, divine work that he has to do, divine service that he has to do on the day of Yom Kippur. And kind of, like one of those peak moments, if not the peak moment, is when he's going to enter the Holy of Holies with the incense and later with the blood of the bull. But the first time he enters is with the incense. And he's carrying that coal pan with burning coals and the ladle with the superfine ground incense in it. And now what we see is he doesn't just enter that room. First, he's going to have this walk between the curtains. And you can imagine, we've learned about those curtains before. They were extremely heavy, densely wound, beautifully fabricated curtains. So the best craftsmanship that the nation of Israel could provide. And, curtains have that sound muffling quality. So he's walking between two curtains, that are about 1 cubit apart. Hopefully he's not a very corpulent high priest, so he can fit through there in that space, right? A cubit about like from here to here is that width, in utter silence, utterly silent, everything muffled. And, imagine that you're the high priest, and you're going to come around the corner at the end of that passageway. And when you make that left into the Holy of Holies, you come into the place of the divine presence. And if you're not pure enough, there's something wrong with you, that you're not fit, that you're disqualified, you could die in there. And you wouldn't make and if you do something wrong, even if you survive the ordeal, you might not make the atonement that the nation is relying on you to make for them. The stakes are so high. So with that in mind, imagine that walk between the curtains. And imagine if we could tap into that kind of awe and reverence whenever we're praying. Because we're standing before God, opening our hearts. And that's really what we're looking for in prayer. So often we just rush through it. It's an obligation. We got to get through it, get back to life, get back to our busy lives. But imagine if we could tap into that reverence and awe that the high priest felt as he walked between those curtains and then entered.